We are less than a month away from the November elections, certain races heating up all over the country that could signal a major shift in our government. Things have been getting just as exciting here in the Low Country. Let's welcome Ralph Prioleau Jr., Chair of the Berkeley County Democratic Party. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Why don't we start at the top of the list? I would say that the governor's race, that's a big one that covers the whole state. So give us your take on Joe Cunningham's campaign so far.
Well, you know, Joe Cunningham, who's been the U.S. congressman before losing to our current representative, Nancy Mace, he's a great guy. He's wonderful for the state of South Carolina. And I want, to put it in perspective that back in 2020, when he lost to Nancy Mace, he only lost by 6,000 votes. So that's something to kind of hone in. He knows how to bring everybody together. He has a knack for bringing Democrats. He has a knack for bringing Republicans together. So I believe that Joe Cunningham will do what it takes to be our next governor of South Carolina.
Well, I think the next race that we should talk about in relation to Joe Cunningham is South Carolina's first congressional district, which does cover Charleston. And speaking of being a little bit more bipartisan in character, I'm not going to say completely, because she certainly is quite Democratic in much of her views. But Annie Andrews, who's running against incumbent Nancy Mace, so she is for the Second Amendment. She would like to see other gun laws enforced a little bit more than we're seeing currently, but she certainly is not against gun ownership. What do you think about her current race?
I've met Dr. Annie Andrews on several occasions. She's just a great person, family oriented. She definitely knows the medical field, and I believe she's in this race for a bigger purpose. When you sit down and you listen to her and you listen to her talk, you get that sense of family with her, and she's really honing in on certain key aspects, like what you just said, the Second Amendment and stuff like that. I mean, because a lot of people, Democrat and Republican, believe in the Second Amendment. She's taken a very good view. She's taken a very moderate view, and I think she'll be well suited for Washington, D.C.
But it does seem that Nancy Mace is quite liked. She's quite popular. She's got some pretty hefty coffers as well. So do you think that that's going to be a bit of a challenge for Dr. Andrews?
She hit the ground and she pounded the pavement. So I think that she's done her job in trying to make sure that people know who Dr. Annie Andrews is and what she stands for.
Let us move on to the U.S. Senate. Crystal Matthews, she is running against incumbent Tim Scott. Tim Scott, extremely popular here in South Carolina and beyond. But Crystal Matthews, she has come under a lot of scrutiny for things that have become publicized. Project Veritas, who released some rather disturbing audio of a conversation that she had with an inmate, and another conversation where she was saying some rather disparaging remarks about voters. So does she have a prayer? I think a lot of people think she doesn't have a snowball's chance.
Well, I would say this. I've met Tim Scott on several occasions. I've met Crystal. I know Crystal. She's our District 117 representative. Right. And my stance is kind of very, I would say, this is the view for me as the county chair of Berkeley County Democratic Party, is the fact that we're going to, while we question maybe some of the veracity of Project Veritas, and we have to keep in mind that Project Veritas was in a recent lawsuit and lost for wiretapping, among other charges. So we have to keep that in mind too. But my stance is clear when it comes to Crystal. She is the South Carolina Democratic Party nominee, and despite people might want her to resign or come off her post, she has elected not to. She's going to finish this race. She's going to run this race, and she's going to finish this race.
And she also has a challenger for her district
Jordan
as well,
Peace.
Which we had him in the studio as well. And so do you think, though, that this very bad PR for her is going to lose her both seats?
A lot of it is at stake for Crystal, with the U.S. Senate and the House District seat. My goal is, as the Berkeley County Democratic Party chair, is for her to win both seats. And I'm gonna tell you why. For me, I would rather have a special election than lose the seat altogether. That's the boat that I am in right now as the county chair. I believe that Crystal will do what it takes for November, and then I think at the end of the day we're going to have to let the voters decide and be the voice as to how they feel. Do they want Crystal as the next U.S. Senate candidate, or do they still want Tim Scott in the same way with her 117 seat?
Wow.
You know, do they want Jordan Pace to be the new person in Columbia, or they still want Representative Matthews? And I think the voters will decide.
And we're going to find out. I want to thank you so much for coming in and talking with us, Mr. Prioleau.
Thank you.
We're back after this.